Most people call these attractants. I like to think of them as distractants. Hey everyone. So I had a comment that asked if I use scents. And the short answer to that is I do from time to time. Of course, I do some mock scrapes. I like to do that whenever there's a situation that I can do that. Talked about that in some previous videos just this year. But I also kind of use them as a cover scent thing. And now they're sold as like attractants. You know, you got your doe estrus and different things like that. And like rattling and calling, I don't think it's something where like you're not going to hit a grunt tube and a deer's going to come running in. And the same thing, you know, you're not going to put out this attractant and a deer's going to come following in on it just because you put it out and it went downwind of it. I really think of it as something as more of a distractant. And not, you know, what I want to do is distract the deer's nose from any scent I may be giving off. Now, to talk about, you know, using scents, this of course, you're going to have to talk about wind and air currents. And there's a little bit of difference between wind and air currents, which I'm going to go through and kind of talk about and explain as well. But you have to kind of look at that, you know, with regards to the wind and the air currents is what's going to take your scent as well as any cover scent you're using, and it's going to take that around and in areas where you're hunting. So you got to kind of look at that and kind of understand, you know, what these, you know, particularly air currents are doing while you're hunting. So one of the scents I'll use from time to time is one of these burning incense type scents. And what's interesting about this, and this is where, you know, I made a lot of my observations, I even got some footage I'm going to show in a little bit here, is as these things burn, they give off a little tiny smoke trail to them. And they'll burn easily 3, 4, and 5 hours. And what's useful about that is you can see what the air currents are doing down on the ground, you know, in a continuous time frame, not just, you know, every so often. There's those little wind indicators that, you know, blow a little, you know, puff of dust into the air, and you can see what the wind is doing. That's usually up by you. You can't really see what the air currents are doing 25 feet down below you. And also, that's like you would have to sit there and continually be puffing that out to watch what the wind's doing on a continuum. This little stream of smoke, you can really see how things change from time to time. All right, so anyone who's lived in Florida for any period of time has probably heard of sea breezes. This is when the sun heats up the interior of the state and that warm air over the state starts to rise. Well, the cooler air over the water, whether you're on the Atlantic or the Gulf side, that cooler air then comes into the state to take the place of that warm rising air. This creates, you know, those daily sea breezes that blow from off the water onto shore. And so you have to remember these, you know, if there's not a major weather pattern, some other frontal system that's going to go overpower this. Like if a cold front comes through, usually you're going to get a strong north wind or a strong northeast wind, and you're not going to have the effects of a sea breeze. But when it's calm out, this sea breeze effect is almost always going to happen. So now initially you may think, always expect the breeze. For instance, I hunt out at Tiger Bay. It's close to the Atlantic over there in Daytona. You're going to expect that sea breeze going from east to west almost every day, which is going to be true, but that's not going to start out till the sun's come up and started to heat up the interior of the state. And something I've noticed where I use those, you know, burning incense scents with that small stream of smoke that comes off, that first light, those early morning hours, especially 5, 6 o'clock when we're walking out to our stands, the ocean is actually the warmer body and the interior of the state has cooled off. So you'll actually have these very slow, subtle air currents going from west to east while you're walking out and getting into your stand. And they really don't change or turn around till at least 9, 10 o'clock till you get, it's not a breeze, but till you get those air currents start shifting back going from east to west. So with that in mind, you can imagine that trying to set up on either an east-west or a west-east, you're always going to run into that problem that at some point your scent's going to be going in the wrong direction for part of your hunt. Now, it doesn't make sense to set up on one side of it, then get out of your stand at 9 o'clock and go set up on the other side to take advantage of that wind. You're more likely to spook a deer out through all that movement. And this is where, I come in and use like a cover scent, understanding that there's some things I can't control about the air currents and the wind. All right, so here's some footage I took last year of the little smoke stream coming off the incense scent. So as you can see here, it's going from right to left. It's fairly steady. But as this goes on, you're going to see it's going to switch and start blowing down in the field of view here. And eventually, it's going to shift itself completely around and start blowing to the right and upwards out. So as you can imagine, this is going to go back and forth from these areas. When you're trying to set up on a deer for particularly archery, where you're only 20-30 yards of a shot and you want them in close, it's going to be almost impossible to keep your scent out of your ambush area. And when I set up for these spots, I focus on getting in an area where I'm on a deer run where they're going to walk perpendicular to me, offer me a good opportunity at a shot at the vitals. A deer walking directly at you or walking directly away, not a good shot, particularly with a bow. And even with a gun, it's just not what you really want to have as a good shot. So instead of putting so much focus on the wind, you want to think about that still, but I try and focus on finding a good tree that has good shooting lanes set up on the deer run, as well as a nice amount of cover. Drawing back a bow is a lot of movement. If the deer is 20 yards away and you have to draw in on them, you want to be concealed very well, and I think that's a little more important than necessarily the wind direction. I have a very good scent control that I do. I do a lot of things. I'll do a video on that a little later, but I put a lot of effort into my scent control, and then just use a cover scent to make up for, you're never going to be perfectly scent free, but have a cover scent just to distract that deer's nose. So as they're walking across, if there's anything they may pick up of me, I want them to be a little more distracted by any deer scents. So throw in a few other videos. This doe, this is Tiger Bay this year. She came around right behind me. Her yearling was following, and she's downwind of me here in this video. Never spooked out, never picked up on my scent. And this is another video here. This deer comes in on my far right. This is up in Ocala, this next video, and walks all the way to my far left. So it's only out about 20 yards there. And as you can imagine, my scent's blowing around there, it's likely going to drift out around where that deer is. So put more focus on your own scent, covering that up. So then, what I use scents for is essentially to make up for my lack of control over the air currents and wind direction from where I set up on my stand. Now, sometimes this can, these currents can shift around dramatically, like the whole example of sea breezes. Sometimes from day to day, if a front comes through or is it approaching, you can go from a northwest wind to a southeast wind overnight, and that can change things around. And a lot of times I won't change my stand. I'd rather have those good shooting lanes and good cover for everything, and then just use a cover scent and do a good job of keeping my own scent odor down and minimal as well. And I think that helps me out a lot. I have a lot of deer come in fairly close. Not always is it a big buck. Maybe they're smarter. Maybe that little bit of scent I might be giving off is being a problem with that. We'll have to find that out. Something that I think helps my hunting and scent control issues a lot, that maybe some of these other hunts that people are doing, example, people who go up in the mountains and do these elk hunts, a lot of times they're camping up in the mountains, and your scent becomes more of an issue when you're not able to shower off daily. Your odor builds up, and no matter what you do to cover that, it's going to be present. Most of the places I hunt, it's either a day hunt or I've showered just that morning, so my scent is minimal, Or like when I'm up in Ocala, if I'm staying for a long weekend or something, we usually camp at Salt Springs there, the state park. They have showers. I'm showering at least once a day. When we're up there for archery and it's hot, we're showering 2 and 3 times a day to take care of that human odor. We put a lot of stress on keeping our odor down so we don't have to, work to find, stands to benefit the wind. One last thing with regards to using scents, and something I started thinking a lot about this past season. When I was out, just doing some midday, scouting through, looking at areas, I came across some spots people were hunting, and I noticed a lot of those little scent wicks hanging off of branches. And I started thinking about all the other hunters out there who are using, scents as well as whenever I happen to use a scent. And I kind of related this to, back to the rattling and calling. At some point, too much can be a bad thing. So use it subtly. I don't think you need a lot of it. It's not something you're going to, spray one of these doe estrus cans out there and some buck's just going to come charging in on you. A couple of times I've wondered if that, if a buck came in smelling that, and I've kind of thought about that, but I can't definitively say that really does work on absolutely, especially once again, these public areas where everybody's using these scents. You got to imagine on opening day, the whole forest probably smells like doe urine and everything with all of us out there spraying this around. So I wouldn't be too concerned of using lots of it. Usually I just pick one. I don't use a combination of number of these things. If I'm just going to put out some doe urine, I'll do that. If I'm just going to burn one of the scent sticks, I'll burn one of those and just leave it at that. I don't use a lot of it to begin with, and I think the deer can kind of get numb to an over amount of scent of these artificial scents that are out there. So good luck this year. Hopefully I'll get a video together on my scent control. I do a lot of little things, and hopefully they all add up for good scent control. I'll get that out to you when I can, and till next time.